We're taping this presentation for the masses who were unable to attend. These, as you know, are part of a continuing series of town hall meetings that the president holds to talk about really any topics that are of interest to people at both of our campuses. We made a little departure from the normal procedure, which was to have a very open sort of Q&A session, because over the last few months, the district, as well as Chandler-Gilbert, we've been engaging in this activity, a massive transformation, movement as it's now being called, of change that manifests itself in a number of different ways. Today, we wanted to talk specifically about guided pathways. I know that we've had an institute or workshop, a full-day workshop here, which was February 27th, I think. And some people may or may not. Were any of you able to attend that session? We did have an hour or so session, hour and a half at Williams.
Teaching in the morning.
And that's actually good that you weren't there, because some of this information was shared at that point in time. But we wanted to at least take some of our time this afternoon to share this information about how the district as a whole is approaching guided pathways. And part of that is this notion of the design principles, sort of what is the framework or what is the outline of what we're going to do. And so we have the benefit this afternoon, and let me introduce to you, if you don't know, Beth Nunnebeller. She's business faculty at Chandler-Gilbert. She is one of the tri-chairs of the Guided Pathways steering team at CGCC. And Beth is going to go through a little bit of information in terms of these design principles and some other things I know that she's been able to have access to as a member of one of the tri-chairs of our steering team, and answer any questions that you have. And so we'll take some time to go through that, and then of course we'll open it up, as we always do at these town halls, for anything else that you might have that you want to ask about. So Beth?
Thank you.
Do you know everybody? This is a small group.
No, I don't.
So Kimberly, do you want to start and let Beth know who you are and what you do here?
Hi, Beth. I'm Kimberly Patterson. I'm faculty for Gen Bio.
Okay, and we've sat next to each other.
Yep,
so.
and MTC and stuff, yep.
And I didn't know business, so yeah.
Brad Bates, we've swapped emails.
Okay, yes, we have.
I teach chemistry out here.
Yes, okay.
Hi Beth, I'm Mark Weaver. I'm with the UT.
Yes, and I've seen you too, so they're all familiar faces. But so I'm going to talk a little bit. So this was the first time at our last institute as we got an idea of the framework of where we're kind of going with guided pathways. And so there's been some updates on and off. And so we're going to, as tri-chairs, we're going to send out updates as we get them from our groups and working together. The next large update will probably come after our May institute or our meeting as a group. And hopefully we'll have some more framework that we're going to kind of continue to work in. So we're going to go through the design principles that we looked at. And so for Maricopa, because we are a college, group of colleges, of 10 colleges under one umbrella, it's a little bit different for us. And so we wanted to know what it was going to be like for Maricopa. And within Maricopa, we are going to have a group of meta majors. You probably already heard this already. Whether it's going to be called meta majors or looking for different titles of it, common areas of interest or buckets of, we're not going to call it buckets, but that's what it is. It's general common areas of interest that students may have, saying I like the sciences, or I like, I really like working with my hands, or I like business topics. And so it can change. We're looking at somewhere 6 to 8, I think is what we're looking at as far as a number of those groups. It's definitely scaling down what we've had in the past. And ideally, we get students that can come in and say, I have an interest in this area. I'm not really sure where, but this is really what I like to do. And so hopefully a lot of front-end career advisement, a lot of that will help them kind of get into those areas, and then after a short period of time be able to kind of decipher what they'd like to do. So, one set of meta majors. So even though every college won't have the same possible pathways within those meta majors, because we do all have our specializations, there will still be the same meta majors. So if I'm at Chandler-Gilbert, but next semester I'm going to Mesa Community College or Scottsdale or Estrella Mountain, it's still that same bucket I can go into. That maybe they have a major, I can start at Chandler-Gilbert, but at this point, I have to move over if I really want that specialization is a possibility as well. And so the crosswalk with institutes within those big meta major buckets, and how in that first semester we'd like every student to get somewhat of a common first semester, and ideally one course within their pathway that is geared towards their major, and move from there. So some of the special ones, like what you teach in, it's going to be how do we do that? Like what group do we have that in? So those are some questions we're going to go through.
If I can just interject, as Beth said, this title, Meta Majors, I think you should consider as a placeholder. Right now, a group of faculty and some academic administrators district-wide are talking about different words or phrases that might be more understandable to students instead of the term meta majors. And then right now, the word institute is also being used by our workforce development folks to identify sort of a cluster of related programs, like say automated manufacturing. So they're talking about having a workforce institute that would be related to that industry sector, and there could be different programs or pathways within that institute. So that was that reference to crosswalk there.
Okay, so as I said, one set of program maps across Maricopa. So even though I may be a student at Glendale Community College, I can see what the map is within that meta major or that placeholder, what it would be to get to meet my needs. So one set of program maps across Maricopa Community College, consistent college collaboration to implement best practices. We're not looking to have 10 different methods. We're looking to have which is working with the best practice to kind of all adopt best practices and share with each other best practices. So it will be really consistent for students to be able to say, okay, there isn't 5 different marketing degrees that I can get an associate's degree in marketing. There's one. These are the common classes. This is the best way to do it, and so we're all going to share in that. Clear and consistent learning and student outcomes in each map. So we're going to look at, okay, what are the learning outcomes that are required? And so that's going to be a big part of, for example, we have students that are planning on transferring to a university in business. And so that's my area. What are some things that students would be common outcomes that we want business students to have, right? So for a humanities class, it might be a class in ethics, because that's obviously a big concern for businesses. And so that would be a student outcome to understand, kind of understanding of ethics, and that might be looked at. So what is the consistent learning for each map going in? Aligned transfer programs, ensuring credit applicability to majors, starting with Maricopa. So ASU is one of the initial 3 people that basically started Guided Pathways. They created major maps, which are, if you go to ASU's website, you can click and you know exactly which classes, and they have common sequences, and they move into their business program now. They used to have some differences. If you're majoring in business, the first 2 years is pretty much the same. And then you branch off into the area that you're interested in. So it's easier for us being a part of having ASU as our biggest university partner, because we get that example from them. Right math for each program path. So does this program need to have college algebra? Or is there a different math class? Or do they need statistics to count as their math class? Because that seems to be more appropriate for what they're doing. College level math and English in the first academic year. So what do we do with our developmental education students that test into there? Looking at accelerating programs, whether it's really a lot of focus in that first semester of getting 2 Dev Ed English classes so they can start English 101 in semester 2. Really a heavy focus in math so they can start in a college level math by semester 2. There's been research that's done that students that do have credited English and math courses in year 1 tend to stay in college. And so they feel like, okay, I have something now towards my degree versus having a large amount of developmental education. So 1 program course in first term is what I talked about. If you can give a student like an aeronautical kind of class, or if you can give a student a class that's in their major, in their first term and 2 in their second term, which is 9 credits in their first year, they tend to have a better focus and stay and retention rate in college. So versus, I'm just getting through my generals. You ever hear that from students? I'm just taking my generals. What does that mean, right? So let's get them on a little bit more focused plan. So 1 program course first, 2 in second, 1 or more courses that allow student exploration without a loss of credit. And so figuring out what that class is going to be within that first semester, that, okay, it'll allow us to explore, allow a student to really get an idea of what these different careers might be, and hopefully make a better informed decision when they move into their pathway.
So a couple of quick add-ons here. Those last few bullets are all about momentum. So you're going to hear a lot about that in the conversation about guided pathways, is how can we help students get on a pathway early and make progress? In other words, have momentum. And so they did some research, all of the research offices across the district, and compiled information in Chandler-Gilbert's case about students on average that are new to Chandler-Gilbert, new to college. Only about half of them actually complete a college-level English and a college-level math course in their first year, which is really shocking to me, you know, when you look across the whole spectrum of our new students. Now, granted, that's a small percentage of our student population, but that's a key population in order to help them establish, you know, a path and make progress on that path. We have a ways to go. And this last bullet point that you see, the allowance for some exploration kind of gets back to that notion of the meta major. That we may enroll a student who says, I'm interested in a health profession. I'm not really sure exactly which one or what that really means in terms of courses that I'm selecting. But you know, if you can offer some courses in that first year that will help the student narrow down all of the different options that might be available to her within the health professions, we want to do that in such a way that those courses the student takes will be applicable to whatever he or she would major in eventually.
Right, and so we made a comment, and we were talking earlier about, does intro to psychology help you decide if you're going to be a psychology major? Well, not really. You know, I mean, everyone goes, wow, this is an exciting class, but does it really show you what you're going to do as a psychologist someday? Intro to business, we look at a lot of fields. I try to do a lot of that, but we're trying to figure out what those classes are going to be that kind of allow for some exploration. And one of the things that we looked at is, our favorite thing is starting with the end in mind. Because students that have a goal, that have a place where they know they want to achieve to, tend to have greater momentum as they work through their program. If I look at this and at this point, but if I'm just here taking my generals, those are the people that drop out. I don't know what I want to do, I'm taking my generals. But if we can get them to know what that is they want to be, and again, is every student going to not change their major, they're going to make a decision and stay with that? Even if they go in the wrong meta major, the wrong bucket to start out with, it isn't any worse as far as loss of credit than we've been doing by this, you know, cafeteria method of choosing courses. So there's been research done that the momentum stays, you have better retention when they know what their goal, what their end goal is. And so we look at that with a lot of our occupational programs. We see the student retention is better because they know, right? They come in there with an idea of what they're going to do. So that's what we're looking at. So advising model, case management. Okay, what's our numbers right now?
The ratio of
Yes.
advisors to students is about 1 to 1,300.
Okay, so 1 to 1,300. Do you see this case management working here? So figuring out how that's going to work, because there has to be a lot of front end work that's being done to make this, you know, feasible that way. So case management model across Maricopa Community Colleges, and how do we get that to, you know, kind of be implemented? Align with best practices and national standards. So the nice thing about Chandler-Gilbert, Maricopa Community Colleges, we're not the first. So there's a lot of other schools that have adopted guided pathways. There's community colleges, there's universities. So we get to see what some of the best practices are, what's working on a national scale before we go and, you know, start out. And again, our #1 layout, what's going to roll out, is going to be version 1.0, and then we move from there. So reduced ratio of students to advisors, and we just talked about that 1,300 number. Nuance to meet students' needs. So focusing, it's a heavy student focus to try to keep them in school, get momentum, and get them, from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. So consistent training for advisors across Maricopa Community Colleges. Again, if our Chandler-Gilbert advisors understand what are all the different fields and what are all the different areas that are offered within the meta major, does that mean having advisors within each meta major, or does that mean still them knowing about all of them? And that's some discussion. Some schools have talked about doing it inclusively a little bit more within, and so we'll kind of see where we end up. That hasn't kind of been talked about how that's going to be divided up. So,
as far as that second bullet, I just got back from a national conference, and I tried to attend as many sessions as I could and talk to as many people as I could about their advising ratios. And some of the colleges that are 2 or 3 years ahead of us in terms of guided pathways have been able to bring their ratios into a range of about maybe 1 to 500, just to give you kind of a benchmark there. And the best institutions that are, for instance, these national award-winning colleges have also been able to encourage more participation in terms of faculty having an advising or mentoring caseload. Yes, Mark?
Is that how they did that? Is that how they got to the 1 to 500 by having faculty as advisors?
Yes, yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
So intake process, so as they come into to Maricopa Community College, no matter what sister college they're at, consistent practices, processes, support. We're looking at some technological support that will allow some assistance, obviously, and figuring that out. Individualized by college only for demonstrated value add. So again, it's the same meta majors, but they might be different at colleges. But the career goals at the forefront. So right now, our model is students come to us, and even if they know they want to do a program, they come in, they start the program, they kind of know what they're taking, sometimes they don't. And when they get done with whatever degree they're trying to get, then they go to see career advisement and say, how do I get a job? Now I have this degree. Well, so it's really looking at the end in mind and looking at, okay, let's look at some jobs. I actually just did that in my class today. I had to look up, what is a job? What are the job specifications, the job qualifications for that job? How do I get from point A to point B? And so a lot of that up front, and that's where our career services can help. That's where faculty can help, because we know our fields and we know what's out there. And these are the things that our industry is looking for from our students. And so career goals at the forefront. And when students have a goal and they know what they're chasing and they know they're just not in here because mom's making you go to school, they are so much more motivated. And that's why we see returning adults coming back and going, okay, I get it, I need this, and being much more successful than sometimes the younger. So if they have the goal at the forefront, it makes a significant difference. And prioritize integrated into academic advising, so, and integrated into coursework. So I'm looking at, again, we're gonna kind of talk about how our model is going to be with academic advising, whether we're going to have specialized advisors within certain areas. Because I've been, even as a faculty member, I used to be in an advising role, and to know everything about everything is something that is a little bit difficult. You can't possibly know everything about every major and keep up with all the changes. So we'll kind of see how that works. But really some intrusive kind of, we're gonna be here at the beginning, we're gonna be here at this point, these different checkpoints in with them. Integrated into coursework. Is there some of that that's career exploration that's integrated into coursework? Does our, for example, an introduction to business class, does our competencies change to make sure that we're looking at all of these different things? If that's that first class, it's going to be exploratory. Focus on work-based applied learning experiences. Obviously, Chandler-Gilbert, we're very applied learning. We want to be as much more applied learning than actual book learning. And we continue to obviously have things we have to teach, but really that's kind of been what we do at Chandler-Gilbert. Industry involvement, program and curriculum development. So all of our instructional councils, all of our different groups, our advisory councils that we meet with to find out, make sure that we are giving them the proper preparation. So a lot of that at the front end. And then I talked about the DevEd, accelerated, contextualized developmental education. There's been proven, so it's kind of a joke. They used to say the, what is it, the inacuplacer, the inacuplacer. And so we look at it, and what has shown to be a better model of how student success has been a high school GPA. So looking at, you know, different alternative methods for placement can be an option, but also accelerated. If that's really where they need to be placed, accelerated, accelerate that through them and focus early so we can get them into college level classes within the first year, especially English and math, because that's so representative of how well they kind of stick with it. So, but we look at best practices, national standards, and national standards have told us that different methods for placement is offering better results and better retention of students. So, co-requisite, modular, etc. So find out what courses can go with, you know, a reading course, and to kind of get the students moving through their program. So we're looking at a lot of different DevEd models.
Okay. That's it for our slides.
Perfect.
So, any questions that our tri-chair Beth can answer for you, or comments even?
So are we building maps on a full load, and what are we defining as full load?
So right now, you mean as a full load as far as
Course.
student
Yeah.
full load? Okay, so, and the idea of these pathways are created to get a student through in 4 years. So we know that that's 15 credits, right? So one of the things, Rob Johnstone, he's our consultant that was working with our college that came. He had made the comment about, we don't want to say part-time or full-time. We want to say on-path or off-path. That, you know, ideally they said students do better when they are fully integrated into a full-time student in school, which for us, financial aid reasons, we've always thought 12 credits. Well, students go, wait, I'm in 12 credits. What do you mean I can't graduate in 2 years? Well, I'm going to show you what this is. And so it'll be realistically, and it might be a path that isn't broken by semesters, but in segments. So if you can take this is what, you know, it's different for us as a community college. But even the community colleges have really tried to focus on getting their students in 15. They have more students that go with 15, and they make it work. So ideally, yes, a full load of 15 credits to keep students on track that way, but it doesn't mean it can't work for part-time students. But we'll know what those examples are. The nice thing for us as faculty is scheduling, because if students are on a specific path, we know what courses they need the next semester. What are the courses you need? Well, that makes it easier for us for scheduling. And so if they're a part-time student, then we know, okay, they've broken, you know, full-time load into 2 semesters, and that their year is going to look like one of our semesters. So, but we still know what classes they need if they're staying on that. But he had talked about a lot of it with 15 hours. So, but we had talked about how a lot of our students are part-time, they work full-time.
Right.
And, you know, but he said it can absolutely work with part-time students, so.
And I would add that some of the colleges that are ahead of us have noticed that students start to pick up their momentum when they see these milestones getting accomplished. So they will come in and talk to their faculty, mentors, or advisors, and perhaps think about, well, maybe because I'm getting closer now, I'm going to cut back a little bit on my part-time hours or my job that, you know, has been keeping me from advancing my education, because they start to see these milestones in sight, and so they start accelerating and doing the math in terms of, well, if I can reach my goal towards, say, a 2 or 4 year degree faster and increase my earnings potential, it's going to more than make up for, you know, this $10 an hour or $12 an hour job I'm doing right now. And so they start, you know, sacrificing and cutting back a little on work and increasing their education just on their own sort of energy.
I've seen that in the years that I did advisement. I would have somebody that was 30 years old, 35, come in and go, just so late, and I said, well, you know what? Okay, look back the last 10 years. If you could have taken one class a night. So start with one class. Don't think you're too late. Start with one class, and then they will, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, they're like, I'm taking 4 classes, and I'm gonna be done this semester, because they get so excited because they accelerate. They think, wow, that goal is only 15 credits away. If I do a summer class and this, I can get to reach that goal. And they get excited because it's really visual, what they can accomplish, so.
So do you, I'm not exactly how to ask this question, but from an organizational perspective, I know for many years we've had, pre-health professions is a big deal for the students in Kimberly's class and my class. But we've kind of chopped up our divisional structure in such a way that we've got a physical sciences and engineering division, we've got a biology division. It's not that we don't talk to each other, because we do, but organizationally, when you talk about a meta major, because when I first saw that, I was thinking, well, we should have a health sciences division in which we, because it seems like, where they're spending their time, the likelihood of cooperation and, that type of stuff, and then building a program that would be that way would be really beneficial.
And that's what we're talking about, outcomes. So it might be a class full of nursing students that happen to be taking the chemistry. That you might have a little bit different edge to the chemistry class. You're still meeting all the competencies, but okay, this is really geared towards these nursing students. And so, yes, and so fields that are general English, math, chemistry could go a lot of different directions.
Right.
So having somebody that is within one of those other maybe health professions versus a science bucket.
Well, I'll give you an example. So
Okay.
for years ago, we did a schedule out here specific when we opened this campus that would incorporate a student. We ran schedules so that a student could actually take the 15 credits and not have conflicts.
Right.
So the other day, we sat down, a group of us, one Friday afternoon, and planned out the engineering program for Williams in a similar fashion. And so this is what I'm getting at, is that if people actually do, like you had mentioned, scheduling, but if you have a divisional perspective where, okay, so we're trying hard not to conflict our biologies with our chemistries and our calculus and different things out here, I'm just wondering if when we look at our organizational structure as our divisions, if that's something that's on the plate or not, or is that part of it?
Well, it's on somebody's plate.
I would think it would be.
I brought to the Division Chair Council back in January a proposed organizational structure that would do exactly what you're talking about. Because if you look at the literature of guided pathways, there's a whole chapter in there about how is or to what extent is your academic organization aligned with these concepts of things like meta majors. And so I took a look at some of the literature and some of the things that we do at Chandler-Gilbert and suggested this idea of schools instead of divisions. And so these things that you're describing as interdependent would be primarily within the same school. And the notion of producing class schedules, and of course there's another variable in that equation, which is how much do we know about the programs with which our students affiliate?
Yeah.
And the fact is, we know very little. One of my favorite examples is nursing. Usually people talk to me and they say, well, everything's all set, it's all structured for nursing. And I remind them to think about, well, you're talking about the 4 semesters that represent nursing school, but there's no map for pre-nursing at this college. And we have over 1,000 students who identify themselves as pre-nursing. We have no program called pre-nursing, but they're all sort of floundering around looking for the right combination of days and times and sequences and teachers, and there's no sort of way of coordinating that, at least in our current structure. Because what we're using is the theory of critical mass, that if there are 1,000 classes on the schedule, then somebody is bound to find some combination of something that they need. And I don't mean that as a criticism. That's the tradition and the long history of community colleges, is that we offer courses. We're a course provider. Now what's interesting about the audience here is that we have 2 faculty who are from a program that they've already got this all figured out. If you land in electric utility technology, you know exactly what you're going to be doing from day 1 till the end.
What a luxury.
What times, what days, what teachers, everything.
Yep.
And so it's really just kind of taking that philosophy and applying it to students that in the past we haven't even really, and again, this is not Chandler-Gilbert, this is the whole sort of industry of community colleges with our philosophy of open access. We haven't really asked. You know, we invite people in and basically invite them to take the kinds of classes that they think will relate to their goal at some point. And hopefully, you know, they'll get there, but, you know, we've done, even in our own district, studies of, well, how many credits do students actually earn on their way to getting a certificate or a degree here?
Yeah.
How many credits do students successfully transfer to the major that they want to eventually be in one day? And how many credits do they have once they get a baccalaureate degree? And there are opportunities in all of those areas to get better. And so, questions, other questions you have about just the general notion of guided pathways or what it might mean to, you know, the areas in which you teach?
There is some consternation as I talk with colleagues that are in other disciplines, because chemistry and biology are nice because they're needed by so many, so we don't feel the pressure that some of our colleagues do that have smaller programs that are worried about numbers. And I know this has come up a couple of times with one of my colleagues specifically, in that they're very concerned about their programs even continuing if we have, because they're viewing this as somewhat of a limiting type of thing where we might actually lose some
But
programs.
we had some good conversations. So Rob was kind of talking about, for example, like a geology or astronomy or certain types of humanities.
Yeah.
Can you find one of those high, you know, or a major that really this would be helpful for them to have this knowledge, how they can infuse it. And so part of that is the faculty member saying, this is why a business major would be beneficial by having this course. These are the skills that they're taking from it. These are the outcomes that they get out of taking this course. The research that they do within this course, so this would make it a great choice to put as part of this pathway. Or if you are a social sciences major, this is a great science to do because of this. And so that's that side of it. And some are going to there's going to be some courses that are going to be lost. Doesn't mean faculty members, because a lot of faculty members can but I mean, it may be their favorite course. Because, you know, he gave the example, what did he say, Russian, like...
Oh, it turned out to be Romanian
history from whatever, you know, period. And they really like to teach it, but does it really have that? And he said, I've used this course because nobody's ever taught it. So, you know, it's kind of safe ground. But yeah, so figuring out, okay, how does this class really help a student that is going to someday be doing this in their life? And if I can make those points, then that could be the kind of the self-select initially. It doesn't mean a guided pathway is going to be every class this way, like some of your programs are very specific. But this is the one that's automatic. There's a few other choices here. So it's not like, okay, but there is kind of, the problem is right now, the students that are floundering around and looking for a major, sometimes they eventually find someone that can help them through, whether it's someone in a college, but people that have no support system at home, so first generation students, a lot of times it tend to be minorities, you know, lower economic status students are the ones that never find someone to help them get through this maze that we have. And so to be able to have that structure provided and say, this is how you do it, and even if I just choose all the ones that are on that pathway and don't vary, I know I'm going to get to my destination. And right now we don't have that. We have, you know, I mean, I help people that are around me, my friends' kids, and I kind of guide them through different things, and I can look at other universities and do that because of my background. But there's a lot of students out there that are trying to say, oh, well, a college degree is going to get me a better life. And they don't know how to achieve it because it's just difficult for them to, you know, navigate. So that's really the kind of the ones we're really trying to help, and that don't graduate at all. They end up leaving because they don't know where to go. They don't know how to get to to that ultimate destination, and they go, this is just too hard. I'm going to keep just going back to work to my job. So.
Well, when faculty ask me that question, the one that you raised, Brad, I often would respond by saying, well, how much do you really know about the students who need your course? Because what most faculty and what most division chairs know is they know what courses make. They don't know, and that's not the same as what courses are needed by your students. So the fact that we really don't have guided pathways right now, and we're talking about implementing this, is so that we can develop a database of what students need. Because as students come in, they're going to be affiliated. They're going to get their shirt or and there are some schools that do this, that give coded ID tags to students based on their school or their meta major, whatever we wind up calling it. So the logic here is the more you know about what students need, the more you can schedule, not just in sequences, but with a higher degree of predictability, that students will have access to those milestone courses and make progress. But Beth is right. We need to be transparent here and say that perhaps a Romanian history of the Middle Ages, which I think is his exact example, that may fall by the wayside. Things right now that perhaps might transfer as an elective for a student or something like that. And that's not to be interpreted as faculty won't have anything left to teach anymore. But some of those sort of things around the periphery, they may change, but I certainly wouldn't associate anything close to that with a course like astronomy or geology. Those are mainstream courses that a lot of students who are majoring in non-STEM areas want to take as a science, to meet their science requirement. So it's really about learning more of students' needs instead of, well, hey, we know this makes, so therefore it must be needed. And that's not necessarily. So questions either about this or any other topic? I can let Beth off the hook.
Thanks, Beth.
Anything else that you're interested in talking about this afternoon? I can wait. It's always good to have a little productive silence. The picnic is tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully it won't rain. I don't think we've ever had a rain out or even close to a rain out for an employee picnic, but it's always exciting when picnics are at Williams. This is a party place and you get a lot of people come out to picnic. So hopefully if you can make it out here,
What
it
time's the band
starts
start?
around 4 o'clock.
What time's the band start playing?
The band's going to start about 5 o'clock,
All right.
but we have a DJ this year. We have David
And
Smith
David.
and a band. So we have David Smith who's going to be spinning some vinyl. If you can stand that generation, Greg probably doesn't know what that means. Spinning a disc, something your grandpa used to do.
Like what? Who are we talking? It's not what we're spinning, it's who we're spinning to.
Exactly. Well, you'd have to ask David. I don't exactly know what his thing is, but I'm excited because he's going to come out and start some music around 4, and then the band's going to come out at 5. So should be good.
Thomas Hall parking lot looks great.
Yes.
All right. That's always a good improvement. We're continuing to have these interesting discussions about traffic and parking at Pecos, but
Yes,
Oh, I bet.
but
here I think we got.
Thomas Hall parking lot looks great.
So I got an email from my chair yesterday asking me to go into the adjunct faculty pool
Yep,
and apply for a job.
yes.
Because in the sciences, we're always a little bit, we have the 6 classes instead of the 5 to get our, so that was interesting, and I'm sure that has something to do with the new system of whatever. I'm kind of out of the loop on that, but I was curious.
Yeah, and I'm struggling to find a way to explain this that's actually going to make sense. But what we've done historically for adjunct faculty and for residential faculty who teach overloads and summer is we've created a job in SIS and transported that data over to our HR system. Well, when we did the upgrade of the HR, what's called HCM, the Human Capital Management System, that upgrade said, well, you need to have a job with a job code that resides in HCM. And that's basically why adjuncts are having to actually do that, extra work of, what did you call it, creating a,
We have to apply for a job.
well,
Yeah, that's
what
all.
you're really doing is you're saying, associate me with that job code.
Right.
Because you don't have to do a separate one for every single person. You just have to do a global job code and then load people into it.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they're basically asking you to create a record that otherwise used to be just, and I don't want to use the word automatically, but it used to be done in some weird data transfer between SIS and the old HCM system. So they want you to create a record that will match up with that job. And once you do that, then we can just keep using that. So it's been tough to explain that to people because they think of it in terms of, well, why would I do that? You already know me, you have all my records. Well, it's because this sort of import thing isn't being done anymore because it was very inefficient, required a lot of manual intervention, double checking, kind of like, you have the Catholic Crosleys of the world that were going through sometimes, thousands of lines of like SIS code to make sure that the information actually got into HCM the way it was supposed to. Well, now, this little bit of front-end work of our adjunct faculty and residentials will, my belief is, make it a much more stable system in the future. So that's a factor for people doing overloads, and of course, anybody who's going to be around summertime. It's when Mark is on vacation.
So Brad, what they said in chairs yesterday was for residentials who are going through, you don't have to have your transcripts.
Yeah,
If
you
you
just have to put it.
just put your CV up and then you can go through the other, you can just click through the other windows.
Yeah.
So all they really need is the CV. So if you've got residentials who are panicking, looking for their transcripts, just tell them, just get your CV in
Right.
and then you'll be fine.
Thanks. Thank you. That makes sense.
Good.
No, it does. I just wasn't sure.
So is that the same with adjuncts or not?
Oh, yeah.
That
All of the
they don't
adjuncts.
need their transcripts if they've already had them in,
So
you
what
know?
was said in chairs yesterday is if they were an established adjunct, they didn't.
Okay, so they've established, they can just put their,
Yeah, that was the
Resume
latest
or
information we
something.
got in chairs, so
Okay.
unless that changes on us again, then that should be okay.
Yeah, all of our adjuncts have been around for a while. We've got them all loaded in pretty well. I mean, that's been going well, but the new thing was the residentials. That was a
okay,
twist for some.
so they just have to put their resume
Yeah.
or
Right.
CV up, and then.
And there
fill
was
out
the question
boxes.
yesterday if summer projects came out of that same money or not, and we never got to a resolution answer on that. So the take home out of committee yesterday was, if you're doing summer project, get it in and get it done now anyway, just in case, so that it's a non-issue later. So like if you have somebody who's just doing summer project or who's been gone, who's coming back off of sabbatical or whatever, have them go in so that they've got access just in case.
That makes sense. Any other questions? Well, we'll stick around for a few minutes if some come to mind. Take some refreshments so I don't have to carry them back. Grab handfuls, grab a bottle of water. But it's always good to see you all.
Well, thanks to both of you for taking the time.
Thank
to
you,
come out.
David, for your masterful post-production editing. Because I want you to take out the comment I made about Mark being on vacation all summer. He works a lot in the summer. I just want the record to show.
All right.
Of course, he's editing it all
I
out,
take no
so.
offense to that.
All right. Well, thanks. Have a great afternoon. Hope to
Thanks,
see you
you guys.
tomorrow at the.
Thanks.
Yeah.